Guillaume is helping me. Welcome. My name is Viktor Zaunders. I live in southern Sweden, and I'm here to share what I've learned the last 10 years of working with local food and local food distribution, and also what we're planning to do to make that hopefully more useful. So I'm calling this a road to plenty because the app we're building is called Plenty, and plenty is something we're going for in the sense of food abundance. Um, Basically, I've just started 10 years ago. I just had to find some place to start, and this feels like a nice gray picture of where I was before I started doing stuff around food. I was working more as an consultant, this type of environment. And in 2013, I went to study with this person who runs a really beautiful permaculture farm, and I got to learn that most of the problems that I was looking at are problems of soil and food and relationship. So this is what I started getting into. And what I learned is that we have lots of ways of doing this that are way better than what we're doing and what we're used to in industrial food production. I took some of this, and I still had this IT background and wanted to do something with technology, and implemented a platform for local food where it was like a one-to-one. Customers came to the producers, and it was a pre-sale farmers market. You met up in the evenings and everything. You try to divvy everything up. And I learned from that convenience is really important. It was really hard to get this to go because it was a bad time of day for both producers and consumers to meet. And also, this wasn't Facebook, so nobody was there, and it was really hard to get people to come on to the platform. So after that, I went through this 1 year research thing. This is Swedish, sorry, of figuring out how food co-ops are organized in Sweden, because that's a model that I started looking at that felt interesting, and created some sort of handbook on how you can do different models out of the ones we investigated in Sweden. So this is kind of a basis for different ways of doing community-based food distribution. And this model, I think, is really powerful. It shows up as food hubs, buyers clubs, food cooperatives. There's very different flavors around it. I also wanted to see what it was like to be an actual producer. I'd been a hobbyist mushroom farmer for a while. I started a little tiny commercial farm that I've been doing for the last 3 years. In order to figure out what is it like to be a producer, to sell food, what are the kind of conditions that you're into. And what I've learned from that is that it's actually really hard to get that to work economically, and that like 70% of the work, and I've validated that with other producers, is like selling and distributing. Like you're actually spending quite a low amount of time on the thing that you love, which is growing the food and taking care of the soil and all that kind of stuff. So this feels like a really valuable problem to look at for me. So what we started after that in our home, after we've done this 1 year investigation of different co-ops, this is the first thing. I know this is not a very glamorous picture, but this is the first thing that we did, was set up some shelves in our co-working space, and we had set up a fridge, and we started to do orders monthly. So we had spreadsheets, or we still have spreadsheets, with local producers and some distributors that we populate with products, and then everybody in the group just puts in whatever they want for the month. Somebody tabulate, or the spreadsheet tabulates, and we send out orders to all of the producers, and they either come and deliver to the space, or we go out and pick it up from them. It depends on the kind of location and what their needs and requirements are. And this is a really powerful way for people to actually get together and to figure out what is the food we want, who are the producers that we want to support, and how do we get that to work. Because what you're basically doing is you're almost giving producers the wholesale experience. If you're a large enough group, they can get really large orders to you, and you are giving them a really good price. And you are getting a better price, or at least on par with what you can get at supermarkets where I am. But you're getting much better produce and a much better relationship. So I think that this model is really, really important going forward. So what we wanted to do with that is, I'm working with Guillaume and Matthias and Bear in this little group called Darksoil. And one of the things that we want to build is infrastructure for this type of pattern, or at least something that can be modified to fit many variations of this pattern. So basically, we have a first kind of draft of the functions that we want to build. We need to work a bunch of the UI, and we need to work on the implementation. And one of the things that we also want to do with this is put it into a group framework that we're also working with. So basically, we have an application that lets you create a group, and then that group can be a food co-op or a buyer's club or something. And this would also enable other groups that use that kind of framework, say it's a school or a church or whatever it is, to just understand that they can take the role of being a local food community and start buying food together as well as the other activities that they're doing. So that's something I'm hoping that the existing communities and existing fabric will be able to see that they can bring food into what they're doing, and that is actually a really joyous and generative thing to collaborate on. So that's what we're hoping. We're hoping that this thing will be modular and easy enough to be able to put into different communities that already exist, so we don't have to create everything from scratch, and so that people are already there. Yeah, so that's basically what we're trying to do, and I'd love to speak to people about it, and we're going to communicate more about it and coming forward. But this is, this is what I wanted to share, and that I hope that people take some of this and think about if there's something local food related that you can get into, because it's one of the major ways that we can really change how our land stewardship works going forward. And I think that's really important. Like the stuff that Paul was sharing this morning around the water system is one of the most important things to think about going forward, because that's temperature is regulated by water, and we really want to think about that. So anything we can do to support that kind of work, I want to promote. Thank you.
I have two related questions. One is more technical. Did you plan any kind of solution for self-hosting of this system within little communities, or do you plan to have a centralized approach where you provide the service even if it is just for a tiny local community? And the second thing is, how about interoperability with other systems? For example, the president of the Italian Linux Society develops a social, local social software for exactly for this, like food, local food groups of acquiring. What's your position on those two things?
Yeah, so our little fast software studio is building stuff on Holochain, and Holochain is inherently self-hosting. Basically, like every computer hosts its own data and then communicates with other computers. Like we're at dweb, so that people know about that kind of stuff. And for interoperability, yes, I mean, both. I would love it if we can make something that can be used with other software or in communication. We're also been talking a lot with people that are doing something called REA accounting, which is basically figuring out a common language for economic activity, so that whatever application you build can be interoperable with other applications that speak that language. And that's something we're hoping to implement with this, so that we can be interoperable as much as possible.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I was wondering, so this is a cooperative, you're basically like pulling resources and then selling together. But I guess coming from kind of a nonprofit perspective, there are many different business models, and so there are also questions around equity, like there are some people who can pay more and some people who can pay less, and so there are other models of cooperation around food. Like I, work with several nonprofits that do community fridges. They do like other types of food distributions. Do you have any, anything to do with that, or is it just, like the standard co-op model for now?
Locally in our co-op, we haven't worked so much with that. We have one of the vegetable suppliers do a sliding scale kind of stuff, so you can choose whether or not you are, or you could you sense into like, can I pay the full amount or a reduced amount or an extra amount, and that kind of stuff with individual producers. But we haven't internally done anything like that. I live in a village of about 1,000 people, and something like a community fridge or food bank kind of stuff is not super relevant for our village because there's not that much there. But when we start working more with people in the cities, that would be really interesting to work with, and especially with like municipal kind of initiatives and stuff like that to help them sort that kind of stuff out. But I don't have personally that much experience with that. Thank you.
Okay. And if you have more questions, oh, go ahead.
I don't have much experience with cooperatives. We live in a small farming community where there are lots of small producers, but most of them just sell like up the value chain, so they sell to wholesale, to sell to the store, and things eventually end up in grocery stores. But I think what you're describing is amazing. It's beautiful. It's something like a home. So I was wondering, how do you deal with differences in quality when you pool your resources together to sell them? Some of the producers produce higher quality vegetables, or are there issues around that between the people? That was tension. I was imagining how do you deal with those situations?
Yeah. In the prior project, we had some dealing with that, but the way we're working now is basically one of the members of the community selects a producer that they want to be in relation with, and that becomes a long-term relationship. And there could be more than one producer if we need more than one producer of something, and then, but it would always, I mean, those are very, I mean, it'd be communication efforts in order to figure out, like, is the pricing the same for all producers? Is the quality the same? Is it like, this is on one-to-one, like in every relationship, you'd have to have those discussions. But so far, we're basically dealing with one producer per the kind of food we're buying as a group. And I'm hoping that could be something that most groups can deal with. Yeah. Thank you. There was another question, but that's all right.
We can take more questions out in the back. We're out of time.
Thank you, everyone.